efficiency in the industries that existed prior to integration?
Kerry, yourself. Do you know that one of the biggest businesses is gold parties?
What is it?
You know, gold parties. You know, they have these parties where people buy your old gold that you don't want.
Mhm.
You never heard of that? They have parties where people
I've heard
buy
of
gold.
like the "We Buy Gold" signs in the stores and everything, but I didn't know they having gold parties now. Mhm.
Right. The what you have in gold is phenomenal. And I'm just looking at it from just a couple of businesses. What you turn in every day in one city in gold is phenomenal.
Mhm.
The wealth that you have held is phenomenal. We just refuse to turn it over with each other and give it back to each other. I give it to you, you give it to your mother give it to my mother give it to your aunt give it to my sister. We don't do that. Other people do that. We don't do that. If we did that, just imagine our job as so-called black people, our jobs as so-called African Americans, our job is to make sure that other nations of the world are fed and clothed and made to feel comfortable on your land. That's what we've been assimilated to.
Oh, as opposed to saying that, we need to structure and set up our own estate and be self-sufficient amongst our immediate circle and our immediate people, and then from there engage in commerce that can benefit other people, and in turn forming mutually beneficial relationships, as opposed to the unilateral situation where it's just a whole bunch of energy going out, but at the end of the day, there's nothing left at home for your estate.
Right.
I see what you're saying. Exactly.
So here's a better example of it. In the central United States, Seattle to Miami, Maine to San Diego, West Coast to East Coast. How much do the indigenous people who live in that country every year, how much do they spend eating Chinese food? Just guesstimate.
Now wait a minute. I want to make sure I get the framework together. You're saying, repeat the areas again for me. I want to make sure I answer you, give you a good guess. Repeat the areas.
From Seattle.
You said from Miami.
From Miami to Seattle.
Mhm.
The state of Maine to San Diego. The area.
Mhm.
How much do the indigenous people of that area, how much do they spend on Chinese food every year?
$100 million.
I would say at least $1 billion. I would say at least $1 billion.
Mhm.
But let's take 100 million because it's a nice rounded number. 100 million. Okay. Now, in economics, so we're trying to achieve balance, right? We're trying to be harmonious, right? We're trying to be in yin and yang. We're trying to walk upright. On the flip side, how much do Asian people spend buying your food?
Zero. I'm comfortable with saying zero based on my observation because I've been in many establishments where our brothers and sisters, you know, they may have a soul food restaurant. They may be from the islands and have like a Trinidadian or Jamaican restaurant. It may even be an African restaurant. And I have never in my time, I'm thinking in between of being throughout the Southeast, Northeast, and visiting parts in the Midwest, because I make it my business. That's one thing. I always support our brothers and sisters who have their own restaurants. And I haven't seen I haven't seen Chinese people in those restaurants.
Right.
I haven't.
So now that's just that group of people in that area. We can go down the line of all of the people who are from other places in the world, how we support them, and they don't support us back.
Now, one thing that I do want to say is that even if it's a situation where brothers and sisters are in a position where they have their own, companies and stuff, and they're not engaging in trade from that perspective, one thing that should be a protocol amongst us as a people is if one, like you were saying, if they're not actually carrying products or goods that are created by the people, and if they're not actually hiring the people to work in their companies, we should never, ever, ever be supporting them. So one thing, that I do make a common practice of is if this is establishment, and if they don't have any of our people working in there, then I don't do business with them at all. Because granted, I understand that everybody is not going to be in that position to go and open up a store and to take those risks or whatever that's involved and do all the networking and marketing. Everybody is not wired up for that. But my thing is that if the people are going to be in these free trade zones and taking advantage of these agreements, and if they're taking advantage of these tax treaties, because that's another thing, too, we'll have to talk about. A lot of different countries have tax treaties in place where their nationals, even though they're here, they don't have to pay any taxes on anything. So, we've heard in our communities for years where they would say, yeah, they come here and they don't have to pay taxes for a certain amount of time. But see, what the deal is that all of that is orchestrated based on tax law and tax treaties. So when it's a situation where if these people are taking advantage of all of this and they're actually operating in communities where we are highly prevalent, and if they can't even hire 4 or 5 people in that community, which is going back to the whole concept of community reinvestment, if that's not being respected, then they are not worthy of getting anybody's fiat.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right, but that's how it's been going. And and it's like you said earlier, we're going to have to come to the realization. I mean, this what's going on in our communities are real. And
it is.
We can keep trying to play and ignore it if we want to. But you see you see the language online. You see the kind of information that's being put out, especially with these. The athletes are being used in a way now that is criminal. So either we're going to keep playing in this game that they have set up for us. We're going to keep being the currency for everybody, because that's what we are. Everybody comes over here making their livelihood off of us. Well, how is that possible? We can create employment for others, but we can't create it for ourselves. How is that possible? I see the Asian restaurants. They got 5, 6, 7, 8 people working in there cooking that food to get it to you. How is it that we can do that and we can't do that for ourselves? So it's like you were saying earlier. There are no excuses.
No, there's not. And, a lot of our brothers and sisters, they do have restaurants, but some people may not be aware of them. They may not be aware of her, or sometimes, and I hate to say it, but because me and you had talked earlier, we were talking about the disassociation and stuff and the disorientation in regards to the geography, but even when it comes down to our foods, some people have put into their brain and they have canceled out soul food, period, up out of their paradigm because they've bought into the vegan propaganda that says that all soul food is bad and unhealthy, when in fact over 80% of the food that would really be in a true old school soul food restaurant is comprised of just veggies, homemade breads, and things of that nature. So, it's just some people, they just turn their nose up against anything that's associated to their culture and who they are as a people. Because I tell you, I have no problem with going to a brother or sister if they know how to cook some real good succotash. And you know what I'm saying? Because, and then, you know, it's so funny, too, because when you start thinking about succotash, they call it like that, 3-bean mix, and they have different names that the so-called Indians would make, or Native American Indians would make reference to. But when you start paying attention and reading about what a lot of these so-called Native Americans are saying, that's our food, that is their food, actually that's the food that our grandparents made back in the day. Even with going back to looking at the whole concept of like that red velvet cake, the red velvet cake is actually based on the red cornbread that a lot of the ancient ancestors would make and use it as a form of, it was actually eaten amongst like the Hopi people as a ceremony bread. And what it was is that it would be the traditional cornbread, and they would take the flour. You know how like the amaranth plant has like those red, like flowers and stuff on it?
Right.
They would actually take those bulbs and those flowers and use the dye off of that and color the cornbread red. And so it's like when you think about things like that, it's like, okay, a lot of people have just been removed from things that are just a part of them. And so I think that's where it comes to people not really supporting those old school and those mom and pop restaurants. So
you're absolutely right. But what I was trying to allude to with the Asian, how much Asian food that we consume. So we're letting other people come over here and dictate what we should be eating, what they're feeding us. And I'm sure everybody knows that Asian people don't eat a Western diet. They eat what they eat over there. So they have all this food chopped up. You don't really know what it is. They can tell you it's anything. And that's what I mean. If you look at our communities and what we're participating in, and we're doing all this voluntarily, because none of these entities could be in our community if we didn't support them.
Right.
So it shows you the vibration that we're frequenting at, because we're taking care of almost every other nation on the planet, and we have enough energy to where we're functioning now. I suggest take all your energy and focus it on ourselves.
Touche on that. I hear you. And you know the lines are filled up and the chat is semi there. And I know, and I'm seeing that these numbers are all across the country. And I know y'all know about the local farmers and the mom and pop grocery stores, the mom and pop restaurants that's in your area. Feel free to share, because there may be some other people who may not know that these establishments exist. And if you have no idea, then maybe these are just some seeds to be planted so that you can really start going into your area to see who is who and who provides what. There's a session, there's a question here in the chat. It says, Sister, from an NZ, it says, Sister, with regards to your vegan statement, if healing oneself from disease, oops, my thing just went out. It says, if healing ourselves from disease, high blood pressure, which is the common disease of our Aboriginal community, then to eat those soul food dishes at our black restaurants, so-called black restaurants filled with pork and other meats, then it goes against our overall health. Easy, I don't know if you heard what I was saying, but common misnomer is that all soul food is bad. And when people think of soul food, they are thinking of ham hocks, they're thinking of pig feet, they're thinking of collard greens with neck bone and all that stuff in it. That has been the image that you've been given. If you spend time with your elders who actually had farms and who cooked their own food from scratch, you will find that in a lot of cases, even though if some of those foods were there, if you are a vegetarian, you would have